Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we inspire you, we educate you, and today we got another level for you. I'm excited. We have a special treat for you today, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. Former NBA player Christopher Gandy is our guest today. And Chris, man, I'm excited to have you on our show, brother. I know the amazing person you are. Introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please.
Daniel, thanks for having me. I appreciate everybody that's out there. I'm super excited. I'm Chris Gandy. I'm the president and CEO of a wealth empowerment group called Legacy Wealth Group, and I've spent years and years trying to figure out how to help people, families, and individuals show up as the best version of themselves in a financial sense. So that's what we're here to talk about. That's what we're here to do. And that's the gift that I've been given from a high.
Well, I love it, man. I love it. I had the pleasure of sharing the stage with Chris Gandy and actually in Chicago, Illinois, and powerful, powerful speaker, a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what we say here in the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show: get out your pen, get out your papers, because Chris is about to drop some knowledge. And like we say, what you write down, you retain more information in your brain, and go back and listen to this episode again and share it with a friend. Chris, what I really want to start off with is this, because you talk about finances, you talk about money, and you speak my language. But one thing that you did for yourself that I see a lot of people get stuck in is they get stuck in an old identity. And I admire you because being a former NBA player, a lot of athletes after their sports career is done, they don't transition well or transition at all. And because I believe the foundation of success and wealth and what you teach is there has to be a foundation. What did you do to prepare yourself mentally to embrace the new identity of becoming the next version of yourself?
Well, there's a couple things. One is you got to believe in something bigger than yourself. And whatever that may be, I think you have an audience. Some people it's God, other people it's the universe, other people it's divine calling, but you have to believe in something other than who you are in this moment. And I think so many people get stuck in their current existence, focusing on the chapter they're in, but we're nothing more than a byproduct. Where we are today, Daniel, is nowhere near probably where most people want to be, but we're nothing more than a byproduct of what we see, hear, and do. And so we are where we are today because of what we believed 6 months, 12 months ago, and the actions we took place because of it. So that's why we are where we are today. So some people aren't happy with that. Some people are super excited about it. Well, where we are right now, we're doing nothing more than preparing for the next chapter of our true opportunity. So for me, it was simple because it was a decision a long time ago to use sports as a ticket or a vehicle so that it would allow for me to open different doors for my life and for the people that were around me. And so it opened doors, and I knew it was a dream with a deadline. I mean, that is what sports is. At some point, it's going to come to an end for all athletes. And hopefully, you've learned enough skills along the way, picked up enough other skills other than what you're able to physically do. Hopefully, you picked up skills along the way that will allow for you to transcend the lines or the sports or wherever you're playing into potentially the boardroom or a career opportunity. And I see that a lot of athletes are behind the game because they didn't pack before the injury came or the timeline came, or they just retired and then they figured out once I get there. But Dan, you and I know it's like changing a car it's like changing the tire on a car when the car's already going 20 miles an hour. You don't do that, right? That's a disaster waiting to happen. So what you do is you stop the car, you prepare, and then what you do is you then put the tire on, where you take the old tire off, right? And then you put the new tire on and you plan that out, right? We don't know when it's going to happen, but everybody out there will have a flat one day, right? We
Well,
don't know when it's
I
going
love
to
what you
happen.
said. Let's circle back because you said something that was pretty powerful. I would write that down, ladies and gentlemen. Are you operating in a dream that's already expired? That was powerful. Write that down, ladies and gentlemen. Are you
Yeah.
living in a dream that has already expired? And when you said that, my career in the automotive industry was 2 decades.
Mhm.
And I, when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, I took what I learned in those 2 decades of automotive industry business, I think a lot of times for myself, and maybe you can kind of chime in on this, is I didn't realize how much I knew about business based on what I learned
Hmm.
in the dealership, having 100 employees. And then when I resigned to take care of my wife, I'm like, man, but this is the thing, talking about what you just said. I wanted to go back to my dream, right? That I was like, I was scared. The idea came in to become a motivational speaker. But as human beings, we run back to what's familiar. So I
Hmm.
went back to an automotive dealership for one day, and God bless my wife, right? Because she would just be going, she was still going through her breast cancer journey. And I got home, she's like, "How was it?" I said, "It was terrible." She goes,
Right.
"Why?" She goes, "Well, maybe it was just the weather because it was a cold, ugly winter day." I said, "No." I said, I'm done." But I recognized that my season was over. So many people, the dream is over. It already expired in the automotive for me. But I see so many people still in an industry that no longer serves them. How does someone take note? How did Chris Gandy say, you know what, this dream expired. It's time to move on? Because I think people force themselves to be in an expired dream,
Hmm.
and then that's why they're not happy. They cope, right? They cope in different ways. What's your insight on that?
Well, I would simply say that, to keep it simple, I think people have gotten to a place where they're comfortable. And because they're comfortable, they don't want to rock the boat or they don't want to make change. But we know change is inevitable because we can see it in everything. When we have changes in season, I mean, we realize that there is constant change. You're either ahead of it or you're behind it. And so many people have gotten used to, okay, here's where my career path, and then the moment something doesn't go as planned, they can't pivot. So I'm gonna use sports for a moment. You can't pivot into a new move. So imagine, Dan, you and I, or anybody on listening to, your podcast, that I have one move, and that's the only move I'm able to do in sports. Well, if you study film and you watch me play enough times, you're going to learn how to stop that move.
Mm,
And if I only have one move, then at the end of the day, if my move is stopped, then I'm in trouble. And so a lot of people only have one move, and that move is that they're dreaming. Young kids, I think that we as parents have to put it in perspective that kids that sports is not a career move. It's an opportunity, but it's not a career move. You based everything you want on a sport or you being able to play a sport, you're setting yourself up for failure because at some point it's going to end, right? And whether you like it or not, it is a dream with a deadline. So I was able to keep it in perspective. My family was important in that perspective, is that it was a ticket. It allowed for you to be basically use sports. And I remember a coach saying to me, so here's something for people, use sports to get what you want. Don't let sports use you. Right. And so many players now let sports use them because they're not, some are monetizing, but they're not monetizing at the optimal level, right? Sports has used them, and then when sports is done using them, then they kicks them out, and then they're left saying, "Well, what happened?" And they didn't take the time to realize as they went through the journey, I can develop new relationships I wouldn't have unless I have that ticket, right, to get in the door. Doesn't mean that they've identified me or they know who I am, and so I want to talk about identity and then purpose because I think it's super important. So many times people get stuck in a space where, especially sports. So I'll just use sports for a moment. What I did for a living wasn't who I was.
say it again. That was powerful.
What I did for a living wasn't who I was, but people identified me as that. So people would say, "Oh, well, it's Chris Gandy, the basketball player." But no, it was Chris Gandy, the son of a mother from the South, the brother of a sister, the grandchild of a woman who had 13 kids. Like so that's who I was as a person. We grew up in the church when I was younger, and we would go to church 3, 4 times a week. And so we were very grounded from a principle of understanding of a higher power and Christian kind of principles in our lives, and we were able to actually have something to fall back on. So when people would identify me as Chris Gandy, the basketball player, I would instantly correct them. And I said, no, that's what I do for a living. That's what I do in front of you, but that's not who I am. Let me introduce to you who I am. And so I think people in our careers now do the same thing. When I hear people say, they say, like in our world, we help people understand, we help people financially, and people will say, well, you're a financial planner. I said, that's in your mind's eye. I said, but who I am as a person is I'm Chris Gandy. And what I help people do is really understand who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, and coach them to be the best version of themselves financially so they can show up better for themselves and their families. That's what I do. Now, if in your mind's eye, if that's a financial planner, that's what it is. But it's so much more than just sitting down and doing a plan. But in our heads, we got to put things in bubbles. And I think if we're open to the idea, just the idea of that it's not 3D, it's not just 1 + 1 is 2. Sometimes 1 + 1 = 4 or 5. And we allow ourselves to have unique experiences with people, we can build deeper and better relationships in our lives.
I love what you just said because somebody out there, you're listening to this episode and you're thinking what you do is who you are. The problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, understand that when you take on this career, this identity, we'll just say you're a baker and they let you go from your industry, then you're lost because you had your identity based in a position of who you're
Mhm.
not. God didn't, right? God created you as a human being. It's not right what you do. Write that down. What I do is not who I am. I love the way you illustrated that because that's what kept that's I had a mother that I was coaching, right? She was very her husband was a very high level executive. Her two boys, one of them graduated. I started working her in that season, and her next son was coming up a senior in high school. But she was a mother, but her identity was in motherhood, and she was depressed because there was no one to cook for her. Her second son left. She was home
Mhm.
alone, and she's like, she was. I mean, we had to do some deep work in that, but right, you can get stuck in an identity of fatherhood and motherhood too.
Oh, she had an identity crisis.
Yes.
Right. And so now think of it like this. And I like visualization because people can close their eyes and think about it. Imagine your whole life. You're out here and you're in the water and you've got a raft and you're surrounded by nothing but water. You can't see the shore, you can't see anything, and you're out here swimming and you're barely able to stay afloat. And now you're trying to figure out which direction do I go? And you're lost. And so it's always better to understand a destination of where I'm going, even if you're lost, because at the end of the day, you can now start to develop a path to get there. And I think that is the challenge that people have had. I see it all the time, and I see it in people. And so, and I think people want to be inspired by people. I think people, the world we live in now, inspiration is fleeting. And I think people want to be inspired to be a better version of whatever they're doing, right? And so that is a catalyst for change. And when people feel inspired, they do things. And I have clients that sometimes will say, Chris, I don't know what you said a lot of things, but I don't even know what we're doing. But whatever it is, I'm doing it with you. Let's do it, right? And so that's very powerful because you're able to help people transcend and move and create that sometimes they don't see in themselves.
Yeah, and it's like the world, right? They might say, well, Chris is a motivational speaker, Daniel's a motivational speaker, and I just had a corporate training this past week. I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, well, that's what Google and the world says, right? But I go deep down inside. I'm here to give you revelation so you can have transformation
Hmm.
because motivation is going to wear off, right? Motivation is like bath, like the great Zig Ziglar said. Motivation you need it every day, like a bath, because it's going to wear off sooner or later. But when
Hmm.
you get what Chris Gandy does is you go in there and give them revelation of you're here, you're broke, but imagine what you can do, right? The revelation of truth. And sometimes this is the CEO said this to his team. Daniel speaking to your truth. He's speaking to your pain with truth. And the way he articulated the words, I'm like, man, right? Like I'm speaking to their pain with truth. And you got to go in there too and say, hey, this is your pain, but I'm going to give you some truth that's going to hurt. But you need to do it because the thing is, this is like being broke is temporary, right? But being poor is a mentality. And I love what you teach and you do. So how does someone, right? when they're stuck in this identity, what's one thing they can do to start that transition like you're talking about?
I think the ability to sit with the silent. So we can get into the weeds of it, and I know we can have multiple of these conversations, but I think we spend so much time thinking about what's next. Our phones and things like that is doesn't allow for us to really sit and think anymore. The
Mm,
phone's doing all the thinking for us. Right. And so it's telling us, here's what you should be thinking about. Here's where you should be. Here's what you should do, whether it's a schedule, whether it's, social media, whether it's, hey, let me look this up. And so whatever happened to the good old fashioned ingenuity of, hey, let's find a map, or you know what, let's go this direction and we'll figure it out when we get there. Right. It's like, no, 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 no. I don't want to do that. And the reason why is because we are being conditioned to use less and less and less. I mean, if you think about the human mind only uses 5 to 7% of it. The rest of it is sitting dormant, right? So doesn't that make people wonder, okay, like if I'm able to unlock another 1 or 2% of this up here, and I have 40, 50, 60 years to live with this up here, carry it around, and I'm not going to use it, how do I tap into those resources so I can expand, grow, and develop into the best version of myself? So then the gifts that I've been given, I can really use them to help this world be a better place. And our name of our group is called the Legacy Wealth Group, but the idea is let's leave the world better than we found it. Right? How do we do those things? And so a lot of what we do is inspiring people so then they can live truly enriched and empowered lives. And that's truly, I think, part of what can they do. I think you start with sitting with yourself and asking yourself, am I where I want to be? And do I have what it takes to actually move to the next level? And guess what? You start to move, right? And you start to move. You don't wait, right? You say, well, I'm not, well, guess what? Get up and you move and you move and you move and you start moving in a direction, because once you start moving, you can't sit still anymore, right? And so everything is built on momentum. That's why I like you guys and I like your family. I like all the things you guys are doing, is because you're building a movement that's built on momentum. And people don't understand that they don't even know why they're attracted to the things. They just know that, oh my gosh, that's great. Did you see what, oh my gosh, look at building momentum. And oh my gosh, it's exciting, because momentum is contagious. And we're able to move people through some of the uncertainty and discomfort in their own lives because they're part of this momentum, this movement. And that's the reason why I'm here today, to help figure out how we could collectively do it together. And your listeners too, if they're listening to this, man, how can we do this together? Because you're not alone. We were all built to grow in communities and relationships and build meaningful relationships during this life. And so, and in
I
some,
love what you're saying because there's a lot of people that I meet just speaking and traveling, and a lot of people I notice, Chris, is when they get under pressure, right? They get under pressure and they isolate themselves.
Mhm.
And I'll be like, call me, right? And then, or some people even hire me. I'm their coach, and I'm like, hey, why didn't you call me? They bring up something in the next coaching session. I'm like, why didn't you call me? Why didn't want to bother you? I'm like, why would you think you're bothering me if I'm your coach, right? I mean, you're that's the investment you're making. But even at that level, people, I notice when the pressure comes, the unknown comes, they isolate themselves and they don't reach out for help, or they just ended up. I'm pretty sure you see that with your in the financial what y'all are doing, right? New people come on board, they're excited, they're motivated, but then the motivation wears off, and then they're like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in the last couple of meetings. Where you at?" Well, and they retract, right? Instead of expanding, they retract. And what Chris is saying, ladies and gentlemen, even though you don't feel like it, you need to take a step forward and build momentum. It's one step, two step, three steps. And what I see, Chris, is so many people in life get hindered or stuck because they start, stop, start, stop, start, stop.
Mhm.
Chris is saying, ladies and gentlemen, no, start another step, another step, another step. No matter how small your step, keep walking. That's what I heard. That's what I'm hearing you say. I love it.
Yeah, and Dan, I'll just throw this out there, and here's something for you and your listeners to think about: is what is the difference between an interest and a commitment? See, I think so many times, because of Instagram and because of social media, is that we have so many things that we say, quote unquote, we're committed to. You know, I'm committed to being successful. I'm committed to my kids. I'm committed to this. I'm committed to the next thing you know, you can't keep all those commitments. A
Mm,
true commitment is something that you'll do whatever it takes to fulfill. A true commitment, right? And so, whether it's religion, whether it's your career, whatever it may be. And so, if you go back and do any research, it tells you you really can only do one or two commitments at a time. But you have people who say, "What are you committed to?" If you ask the people you're coaching, "What are you committed to?" They're like, "I'm committed to this." Well, let me share with you the difference between an interest and a commitment is convenience. Because the moment it becomes inconvenient, you compromise that commitment. And so, Dan, here's how people can understand they can do that paradigm shift is everybody has somebody they love in this world and they would do anything for, whether it's their mother, father, kids, whatever it may be, right?
right.
They would. Everybody has somebody, right? They may have to dig and think about, but somebody they would do whatever it takes for that person. Okay. And so at the end of the day, if you're committed to them, regardless if it's convenient or not, regardless of how you feel, regardless if you wake up in the morning not motivated, regardless of all these other things.
Yeah.
And so when you start to measure, am I committed to working out? You and I were talking about working out and the commitment to do it. Well, guess what, Dan? I hurt my leg today. I'm sore. My back is hurting. Guess what? I ate bad last night. I was out late last night. You know, Convenience now pops in, and it's inconvenient for me to go at the same time. You and I were said we're going to meet at 4 o'clock every day for 365 days in the morning, every single morning, because I'm committed to that. And I show up the first 10 days. Then the next couple of days, guess what? It rained, it snowed. Guess what? Somebody blocked me in. There was a car accident, blah, 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 all the things. It became inconvenient. And so was I really committed or it was just a high interest for me? And so people have to start looking at the things they commit to. And the first thing they got to commit to is to themselves. That is the first thing because most people aren't even committed to themselves.
Yes.
So if we start with that, what are your absolute commitments
Mm,
that under no circumstances you'll compromise for? If they just start with that, that will motivate them to move in a direction that will change their lives.
yes. You know what came to mind was when right? I, I I love what we're talking about because people get upset, right? In the fact of, man, they didn't commit. Chris didn't commit.
Mhm.
Adi didn't commit. Brittany didn't commit. They didn't commit. Well, how can they commit? How can someone commit to you if you can't commit to yourself? That's the
Right.
thought that came to my mind. And so many people, they want people to commit. It's like believing, right? Well, yeah, sometimes you need somebody to help to believe in you, but at some point you got to start believing in yourself.
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, think about this, right? Maybe you're going through a season right now where you're stuck and maybe you're having an identity crisis. Well, the question is, why are you not committing to yourself to get out of that rut? Why are you not committing to yourself? And what Chris is saying, the moment you commit to you, then the world's going to show up in some form or fashion, whether it's through a human being, a helping hand, a scenario to commit to you to help you. And it's like business. When I left my career to take care of my wife, and God put it in my heart to become a motivational speaker, I just said yes. But until I said yes and I really believed it, and I walked away from a $250,000 a year job because I had to man up and take care of my wife, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, then the opportunity showed up. But I truly believe that the opportunities ain't going to show up unless you commit, ladies and gentlemen. So the question I want you to write this down right now, ladies and gentlemen, is what are you not committing to? What are you not committing to? And maybe you're mad at your wife, you're mad at your husband, you're mad at your boss, you're mad at your kids, or you're mad at your parents, you're mad at God. But you ain't waiting on God, right? God's not waiting on you. You're not waiting on God. God's waiting on you to commit.
Mhm.
I love what we're talking about.
So that becomes a challenge, I think. When people will say to me, "Hey, Chris, here's all the things I want to do," and I said, "Okay, out of these things, what's the one thing we're absolutely committed to?" And then they'll sit in silence. They're like, "Well, I told you all those things." I said, "No, no, 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 no. You can only be committed to a couple things at a time." And so then all of a sudden it becomes, well, this one and this one. Okay, got it. So the other ones are a byproduct of you being committed to the other two. So then we build strategies around the things they're absolutely committed because then I don't have to motivate them because they're committed to it. Like I'm committed to loving my child regardless of what's going on and regardless of what's even if he's not listening, even if he's being a knucklehead, even if he's not following, doing what he needs to be doing, even if it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, I'm committed to being his father and doing the best I possibly can to be there when he needs me if so that's the commitments are real. And I find that I go around the country, I speak at other financial groups and I speak at other opportunities, entrepreneurs, whatever, and they'll say, I got a dream. Here's what I want to do. I said, what are you committed to? And they'll say, well, I got to pick my kids up at 4 o'clock and, I got to do this and I got to do this. And I said, are you truly committed? Because it's going to take you, you're going to have to work 16 hours a day. That's the commitment you're going to need to make. So if you're compromising, all of a sudden you're compromising, well, I don't want to do 16 hours a day. Why would I want to do that? You've already compromised. Dan, I'll relate it to this. And someone told me this and I was like, wow, it was like an epiphany. If you and I were to go work out, Dan, and there's something called the bench press, right? And so let's say I've only done 145 or 200 pounds on bench press. That was like my PR, my max. I did it one time, right? And you were working out and you were pumping weights, and your max was like 300 pounds, right? And so guess what? I got under there for the second time, whatever. I'm all fired up, and they put 300 pounds. They're like, Dan can do it. You could do it. The moment I say, well, I've never lifted that, I can't do that, that's heavy. The moment I say that, I've
Mm,
already beat myself. My chances of actually pushing that weight is zero. Not 1%, it's zero. Because I've mentally already told myself,
yes.
can't do it.
Yes.
I've never done that much weight. Like you've already told yourself. So some people, let's shift to people's careers. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. Some people, because they've never did it and because they're so uncomfortable, they can't even wrap their mind around it. They've already convinced themselves they can't do it.
Mm,
And because of that, guess what? If you believe it to be true, it's true because
wow.
this is powerful.
Mm,
And that's guess what? Our actions follow. And so I believe in our career, there's nothing I can't accomplish. I believe I can make $1 million a year. We did it. I believed I can make $3 million a year. We did it. I believe, and people are like, you're crazy. Like, why do you believe those things? I said, because no one told me that I couldn't. So why wouldn't I believe it? Right? Everything's possible. Anything's reasonable. So if somebody else is doing it, I can do it. And so I think we need to people should adopt that kind of mindset. And if not, work with people and be around people. Because guess what, Dan? If they're around guys like me, you, and other people that believe in that type of mentality, it forces you to start to think like that too. Because guess what?
So,
We're
so
nothing's
I was gonna
impossible.
ask you, where did I love what you just said. So think about what Chris just said, ladies and gentlemen. Where did that belief come from? Right? The belief that I can come into an industry and help people with their financial dreams and financial planning. And you go from the revenue of 1 million to 3 million and you believe it. Where does that belief come from for Chris Candy? I think people
Well,
need to
for,
hear this.
well, for me, it's bigger than me. I go back to when we start to put ourselves at the center of all things possible, we've lost already because we have to believe in things bigger than ourselves. I've listened to you. I've done my research, and I know you're a very staunch believer in Jesus and God and Christianity. Those things have grounded you. And so at the end of the day, even if you can't see it, because you've never seen God before, right? You've never physically seen him. You just shook his hand and be like, "Hey, how are you? Let's buy a cup of coffee," right? You've never seen him, but you believe. You believe. And guess what? There's things that are in life that help you believe because you probably have seen miracles, people that you thought, they weren't going to be here tomorrow. And next thing you know, they're walking, running marathons. You're like, what? How is that possible? Right? You've seen things that you cannot explain. And the only thing you can go to is my grounding and my principles is it's bigger than me. It's bigger than them.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we start to think about ourselves, we got to get out of our own way because again, we can't do it on our own. So what are some of the things? So why not believe it? Right. And I just didn't say why believe it, but why not? Because there's other people that are doing it. I just get inspired by other people that are doing it. I watched a guy. I remember the first time. I remember I was in this industry, and they said, "Oh, there's something called MDRT, or what was like the top 1% of financial advisors that are doing comprehensive planning." They were like, "Man, when you're at MDRT, it's like the 1% of the 1%." And I looked around, and I go, I played sports. I'm the 1% of the 1%. You got a better chance of getting hit by lightning twice before ever walking on a basketball court, and especially in NBA. So I'm the 1% of 1%. So you must be talking about me, right? So
Yes.
what do I need to do to be an MDRT guy, right? So I started to mimic the behaviors of the people that were. I studied them and I watched them and I focused on them and I actually watched their behaviors. I watched what they said. I watched what they did. I wrote it all down. Champions keep copious notes, right? And I'm like, I wrote it all down, memorized it, committed it to memory, right? I'm like, okay, well, guess what? If I do it enough times, just like they do it, I'm gonna get similar results. And so next thing you know, we were MDRT. And they were like, how did you do it so fast? And I was like, one, I believe I followed, I've watched the masters, and then guess what? I became a student of the game. Right. And I'm like, okay, so that's what I did. So then I started to realize, I said, hold on, wait a minute. Those guys are limited by their beliefs on their own. What would happen if I did twice, this three times, and that twice in the same amount of time? What would happen? And then one of my mentors told me, he goes, it's not compound interest in our business. It multiplies. It's like three, four, five, six, eight times because of it. I'm like, really? Huh. Okay, so I'm curious. Okay, so what happens if this happens? Boom. Okay, so that number doubled. That number actually tripled. It didn't double. Okay, oh my gosh. So then what we did is we created a bunch of processes and systems because everything is either process or it's problem. So if go to our entrepreneurs, every time they do something, they create a new process. That's a problem, right? So you create processes and then you follow processes because that allows for you to scale. And so I followed the process of MDRT and then I just put it on steroids. And I said, okay, because again, I came from sports, so I understand statistics. So I can look at statistics and understand who had a good game and who didn't.
Yes.
Based on, I don't have to watch the game. I can look at the statistics and it tells me the result of what happened. So I looked at the statistics and I started saying, okay, if I do this and this and this, what will the statistics look like? Okay, got it. And then it didn't matter financial services at that point. It just became about how do I build a successful, sustainable businesses that are grown on processes and systems versus personality. And then we were able to scale it. And
Mm.
so that's why you're talking to me today. I just happened to be in Chicago because of all the plane stuff going on. But typically I'm between Chicago, California, and Florida, right? So I was just in California. I was here because I was actually speaking yesterday, but I'm on my way back to Cali to the West Coast, and that's where I'll be. So.
Are you an aspiring speaker? Do you have a book that you've been wanting to write for months, maybe even years? Or are you an aspiring podcaster? You want to start that podcast like the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show and don't know where to start? Well, at Daniel Gomez Enterprises, we can help you do all three. We can help you become that paid speaker, share your story to the world, write your book, and get your podcast launched and help you produce it. We'd love to help you. Give us a call at 210-663-5954. That's 210-663-5954. We can help you become that paid speaker, write that book, and launch your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call now. You're started transitioning. Now you have a concept that I love. It has to do with the number 1% because you brought that up, right? You're the 1% of the 1%. And tell me about your concept about the 1%.
So the idea came from just observing sports, right? So statistical data tells you is that everybody believes they're going to be a college athlete, right? But it's less than 3% of the population. Okay, I mean, let's call it. It's actually less than 3% of high school athletes that go on to play in any college, right? And so I played at an elite college. I played in the Big Ten. I played for one of the universities, well, the University of Illinois. And so of that 3%, it's even a lower percentage of the ones that play at big time, what they call Division 1A NCAA schools, right? So that number gets even smaller. And then everybody who's actually good at basketball then gets an opportunity to maybe one day have an opportunity to play and continue their career after. Not necessarily just the NBA, because there's other professional teams. There's international. There's like the CB used to be the CBA, and now it's the NBA Developmental League, right? So just the opportunity to continue to play. And so I was just threw my hands up and said, well, let me give it the best shot I possibly can. And so lo and behold, the ability to be able to walk onto an NBA basketball court, they say that you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning twice in your lifetime than ever to suit up and play for a professional sports team. And so, in my eyes, in my conversation, in numerous times, I'm like, I have a gift. See, basketball gave me a ticket to be able to entertain people. See, Dan, I'm gonna go real deep on you. I was an entertainer. I didn't displace it with I was a basketball player. I was an entertainer. Think about it. People came so they can escape their life. They could pay something to watch a game. And it's a game, right? It was a little sports game. You think about it as what sports is. It's nothing more than I was a kid going out and being able to actually put a ball in a basket and I was getting paid to do it. Like I'm not solving cancer. I'm not changing the world. I'm not solving, the world crisis. I'm not doing that. I'm actually playing a kid's game. So when you can keep that in perspective, it's a kid's game, right? You go play, go ball, go throw it in the circle. Like, it's a kid's game. Hey,
Yes.
ball, hey, here's a ball, go run around with it, right? It's a kid's game. And we were fortunate enough to get paid. Now I transitioned that. So I was able to entertain hundreds of thousands of people. Usually 30 to 40,000 people would come watch us. And for an hour of their life, they would be able to escape their reality and watch me entertain them. And hopefully we did a great job enough so we actually competed at a high level. Well, now you transition that into the world that I live in today. And so I had an experience that very few people will ever have. And that experience, whether it was playing in Chicago with one of the best teams ever, whether it was the opportunity to see the world and travel to hundreds of countries because of it, I get an opportunity now to share what it's like behind the scenes to be part of that 1%. And so I'm super excited about the opportunity to share that in a forum with you, and we're gonna create this fantastic opportunity of how do you tap into the 1%. And we talked about from the backcourt to the boardroom. How do we
Yes.
take that and teach people, hey, that 1% exists,
The
right?
one.
Because if we're all 1%, we think about it, Dan. I said this from the stage as you heard me. If we all get 1% better each day, in whatever it is, whether it's helping my kids or whatever, 1% better in a year, we're 365% better than where we are today. If we just do 1% better each day, right? Just one. That's
Oh,
it,
baby. I
which
love
is nominal.
Yes. Well, that's the book's going to be coming out, the 1% difference. And as I'm listening to you as we're conversing, I want you to think about this, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm hearing Chris and what he's talking about. And right, the basketball career that he had, college, professional work, playing for the Bulls, playing for the Spurs, that prepared him for his next season. And I'm right. You travel the world. You're doing this. Now you're still traveling, but I think a lot of people they misuse their experience. They don't take into consideration what they've been and learn in the first seasons of their lives, whether it's in your 20s, your 30s, and as you're growing and becoming older. You've leveraged, the word that comes to mind is you've leveraged your experience in high school basketball, college basketball, 3%. Man, I'm good. I made it. And now that gives you the momentum, like you were saying, to win in the finances. And I think as we're talking about this, I see a lot of people that discredit some of the successes they've had or just experiences they've had, and they don't tap into that, and they wonder why they're losing. Like for me, I learned a lot in the automotive, like the automotive industry taught me grit, right? A lot of people don't win in
Right.
entrepreneurship because they don't have corazon, like we say in Spanish, right? They don't have grit, they don't have heart. And you're gonna have days where you're gonna want to cry and give up. And like me and my daughter Brittany, we were at this corporate event, and it was a boardroom. There was about 20 people there, and like they just it was an amazing response. And we sold out of books, and we had gone to a prior event, and it just wasn't the way we had hoped it. But I told my daughter, look, most people would have given up after that last two experiences. What keeps us going is we show up whether we're limping, whether we have our tail between our legs, or a loss. Most people don't show up after a loss. And I love what you're saying, because ladies and gentlemen, you need to listen to what Chris is saying. Write that up. Write that down right now. Ask yourself this question: am I showing up after a loss in my life, or I'm showing up after a loss in my business? And most people don't. And the 1% difference is you show up no matter what.
That's right. That's right. We're going to talk about in that book. It's interesting, the mentality, because 90% of it's mental. I'd say 80% is mental, 20% is heart, and connecting the two. And how do you connect the two? But I will tell you that you just said something that's kind of interesting. And I go back to some of the things our coaches say. Our coaches, and it's great sayings. Our coach used to tell us, he said, listen, when you win, celebrate the win and move on. He goes, because at the end of the day, you're playing a full season. And it made sense, because everybody wants to celebrate the win. And then guess what? You go through a lull, because guess what? You get comfortable and you stop doing the things necessary so, that you did in the win. He goes, but when you lose, take a moment and understand why you lost, and then show up because you lost. And I'm like, huh. He goes, at the end of the day, both of them have short memories. If you won, you celebrate, you move on. You lost, you take 24 hours, whatever it may be, whatever that is, 7 hours, doesn't matter. And you say, you know what? I have a short memory. Because I go back to Dan, think about it. If I'm a great 3-point shooter and I miss the first five, naturally, coach is like, you got the green light, shoot. I shot the first five. The other guys are like, man, you're cold, right? Do I keep shooting? Or now do I give it to other people because I don't want to be the guy that balls the ball? And then now they started thinking that we lost because of me. And like now, our mind starts going,
Yes.
right? He said this, he goes, great shooters have short memories. Bad shooters have short memories. Either way, have a short memory and move on. And I was like, wow. Okay, that makes sense. Which is the reason. So if anyone came to my office, we've been so blessed and fortunate that people believed in what we were doing, and we've had 26 years of just an unbelievable run. You look at our business track and the people we work with and people we've helped achieve financial success. I mean, we've won so many awards. It's crazy. We even got a pile of them in a closet somewhere where we can't even put them on the walls anymore. And so you walk into my office, and I have a mentality in my office. We don't put awards on the wall. And they're like, what do you mean? Like we can put them all out there and we can decorate it and blah, 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 blah. I go, no, we don't hang awards. And they were like, what do you mean we don't hang awards? And I said, we don't hang awards because the moment you start doing that, you start believing in your hype. I said, and guess what it does? It seeds contempt. I go, and guess what that does? It makes you start to believe, well, I did it last year. Look at this. Look at where I'm at. I've done it all already. Like, why do I need to keep proving myself? And so you mentioned something, the grind. Well, I would tell you that burning desire that exists inside of all of us, and we need to wake that flame up, is that sometimes we have to protect ourselves from ourselves. And we have to put ourselves in a position at times so we have a short memory. And that was one of the things that we can you imagine? You and I were playing basketball. We won a huge game, last second shot. You made the shot, whatever it may be. And then we show up 2 games later, was like, well, Dan made the shot. We're still talking about that. We're still celebrating the game 2 games ago. This team's saying, I don't care. Like, who
Yeah,
cares? Right? You're going to show up and play today, Dan. Like, it doesn't matter if you made the game-winning shot two shots ago. And so we have to figure out to be part of and to be able to do it consistently. You've got to create an environment that allows for you to hone and go back to your strengths, go back to your roots, and really develop and grow and continue to grow over and over and over and over and over again and create that. And so don't get drunk on your own success.
I love it. So as we're getting ready to land the ship here, I want to ask you this question, right? So what's one thing, the 1% difference? How does someone start to develop that mentality of the 1%? What's one
Yeah.
thing they can do? What's a tactical step or something that you did that really helped you? Because you said, listen to what Chris said, 80% is mindset, 20% is heart. And really, because I know people that have the right skill set, they have the right knowledge, but if you don't have the heart and the thinking to go with it, you ain't gonna do anything with it. How
I
can
call I
someone
call I call that, Dan, intellectual derelicts. Right? The world is full of very intelligent people that aren't successful.
say that again? Intellectual what? That was
Intellectual derelicts. That means they've gone to school. They said, like, show up. They show up. They say, hey, I've gone to school. I'm the smartest person in the room. But at the end of the day, they can't create revenue or money, right? And I think part of it is the fact that you said, what can people do? First things first is check in with yourself. That's
mm,
first, and decide what are you absolutely committed to, and write it down. I'm a big believer in that book, Think and Grow Rich. They talk about the 6 steps of creating goals, because it's a strategy, a process, or it's a problem, right? People create goals and they're like, well, here's my goal. So if they don't have the steps, the burning desire, number one, right? Number two, what are you going to give up? Number three, like, so I go down those steps. But the last one is the most powerful one, is write it down and read it twice a day. See, people take their goals and they put it on the shelf. And guess what? They dust it off every 6 months, a year, and say, oh yeah, that was my goal, right? That's my goal. Well, again, remember I said create an environment that allows for you to show up for yourself, commit to yourself. So those wonderful things we have, we call our cell phones? Take one goal, just one, and put it in your cell phone as a reminder every single day, twice a day. And guess what it does? You have to physically get rid of it, but it reminds you subconsciously, this is what I committed to. I'm either moving closer to that goal or further away. So that's a gift for people. Like, listen, use your technology for something other than entertainment. Use it to help you accomplish the commitments, and
yeah,
look at your family and find out who you're committed. What are you committed to? And the things you aren't, we understand that comes and goes, but the things you're committed to, double down, commit to those things, sell out for. The word, I remember when I was growing up, and I know we
love
got to land the
this.
ship. I remember when people say, hey man, you're a sellout. Well, the connotation is bad, right? In our heads. But now that connotation, I want people to say, he sold out for the things he wanted in life, right? He was committed to those things, to becoming great at those things. That's not a bad thing to be
Yeah.
called a sellout now. And so
I
I'm
love that
excited
because
about selling
it's
out
like
of all this.
it's like the word consequence. It's like consequence has a negative indication, like sellout, right? But it's like I was telling my son, I was like, you don't have to apologize for your success. It's a consequence of you serving God and showing up.
Yeah.
Who else is like this morning? We were talking about working out this morning. True story. I woke up. I didn't want to get out of bed. It was like 4:30. Prayed. I studied, did prayer. Then I closed my eyes. I did. My trainer will be here at 6:30. I fell asleep. I was listening to an audiobook and I felt bad, right? But then I'm like, no, like, you know what? Like, I'm waking up at 4:30. I said, hey, Reggie, I'm sorry. Can you come back? He goes, yeah, I'll come back. So we did a workout, but right, are you committed to your health? I'm 52 years old. If I'm not committed, but the success is a consequence of showing up when other people don't show up. You're selling out, right? When you sell out, it's like, how can you not win?
Hmm.
Most
Hmm.
people don't sell out. I love the way you say that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm,
You know,
I'm in
the
awe
idea
of that. Is that going to
the
be in your
concept,
new book?
the concept of burn the ships. You
Yeah.
know, if you go back and where does that saying come from? It came because, the Spanish Armada, whatever it may be, go back and read the stories. It was because they were losing wars. And what they do is they would bring the people over and then they would run when the moment they got scared instead of fighting and going forward. So what they did is they pulled the ships up and then they decided to burn the ships. So guess what? The only way you're getting home is you got to go through. Right. And people haven't burned the ships. They just set it on the side, maybe put it over here, put it off a runway, and the moment. So I just want to share this with you. The moment
Yes.
you tell yourself you can't do something, or if this doesn't, when people say this to me, well, if this doesn't work out, what do you mean? Like in my eyes, it's either going to work out or it's going to work out. There are no other choices. Failure is not so put in your head, failure is not an option. That will be in our book. Failure is not an option. We will start with that. Failure is not an option. So don't allow yourself to believe it's an option. And you won't take it as an option. Like failure is not an option. It's not. This is the bed. I made it. I'm gonna lay in it. I'm gonna be the best at it. Right. And just here we go. Right. And so that's how we roll. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to instill in others with in their finances is that we will get there. People are like, I don't know if I can retire. Well, no, we're going to retire. I'm going to get you there. You can't do this without me, and we're going to do it together. Hook or drag them, whatever. We're going together because I don't want to look back and say that we didn't commit to what we said we wanted to do. And at the end of the day, we can build this championship together over and over and over and over and over again. And people are just so excited about the opportunity to be a part of something like that. And so, yeah, we're a little different, but I love it.
Well, I know I know you're of course you're my friend and my brother, but I can't wait to read your book, The 1% Difference. We're honored to be your publisher, and the book's going to help people. Just based on this conversation that we're having, you have so much wisdom to give to the world, and just hearing you talk in your dialogue, like people they're going to need this book, The 1% Difference. Let me ask you this: as you're preparing for the book, what's one thing that your future readers, as your book comes out in 2026, what's one thing that you're going to want the reader to take away from your book that they can anticipate that, you know what, it's not just a book, it's going to help you.
Yeah, I want people to understand that because I've had this experience, I've had the ability to hone in on lessons. You don't have to touch the stove to know it's hot. There's so many times you can learn from other people's scenario. And so when they read this, hopefully there's at least one thing they get out of it that they can implement immediately in their life and start to change their life. And so I think by sharing, because this has been in the works. I know you and I haven't talked, but he doesn't know this is coming. But this has been in the works. I wrote a long time ago. When Hoop Dreams came out, I wrote something called the Cagers Memoirs, which basically were stories of all the guys that had played and the story of them after the lights fade. Right. And after the lights fade and the popcorn stops popping, people stop cheering their names. What happened to those people? And the story of their lives. And I started writing those in journals. And so I have lots of other stories that aren't my stories in which I can learn from. And so I feel that my story and the opportunities and the relationships and the things that I've done will allow for people to take something from it, implement it, use it in their lives, and hopefully they become at least 1% better and they become part of that 1%. And if they improve their lives 1% every year, 10 years from now, they're 10% better. Like just they start to implement some of the things, some of the lessons, not the stories. They don't want to live my story, but they can create their own. And it will grow their life. It will make their lives better. Just simply because they took the time to learn about themselves.
What's a scripture or a quote you rely on in times of adversity, Chris?
Uh, leave the
Scripture.
world better. Leave the world better than you found it. You were meant and created for this moment. Um, So every moment I take, it's an opportunity for me to dive in and say, okay, what is your purpose? Why are you here? What are you going to create? How are you going to touch the lives of the people that you engage with on a day-to-day basis? Because we all started someplace. We know our date of birth, and we know the date in which we don't know the date that we're going to leave the face of the earth. But the one thing I ask all of your listeners is, when you're gone, what are they going to say about you? Because they're not going to say, "Hey, he had tons of money." They're not going to care, right? They're not going to say, that he was he worked in financial services. It's like 10 years from then. When they say, "Here's who this person was," they're going to talk about the relationships you created, the lives you changed, and the people you touched, and they're going to talk about the things you created while you were here that will live beyond you. And so for me, it's simple. Leave the world better than you found it. Everybody should, because that's what a legacy is.
We're gonna have to bring you back, my brother. I tell you what, this is part one. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Gandy. If someone wants to connect with you, brother, we're definitely going to put your bio information on the show notes. But what's the best way to someone to connect with Christopher Gandy if they want to connect with you in financial service or just to connect with you, my brother?
They can go to our website, which is called Legacy Wealth Group. So that's tlwgllc.com. And you can request a meeting, or you can, go that route. Or I have a assistant that pretty much handles the schedule, and you can reach out to her. Her name's Dawn Schreffler. So she's also on the website too, and you can see her. But this is great. I'm glad. Number one, it's a blessing, and I'm fortunate to be here in this moment with you. Hopefully the ears and the eyes and the hearts have opened today to just embrace some of the words that they heard today. And at the end of the day, we're here to make humanity and people's lives better through this channel that you've got. And I look forward to doing it together and building and growing together, and continuing to support you as much as we possibly can, because together we make the world a better place.
Amen. Woo! Chris Gandy, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for showing up here today with us. Thank you for making us one of the top pass podcasts globally, worldwide, and yet it is worldwide. So thank you, everybody listening in Jamaica, in the UK, and all around the world. And if you haven't gotten a copy of our new book, Accept the Upgrade, it's changing lives already. Most people upgrade their cell phones, but they never upgrade themselves or what God wants to give you. So get a copy on Amazon, get a copy on Kindle. And if you want to publish your story, we want to help you here at DGE Publishing. Until next week with another amazing guest here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. We'll see you. Thank you once again for tuning in. Chris Gandy, once again, thank you, my brother.
Right,
And
Chief.
we'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen.